Is first-time home ownership turning into a scam? I'm going to be breaking down some scary stats here in the Nova Scotia area on what it looks like for affordability for the average income. Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, my name is Greg Pierce. I'm a local real estate agent and investor on the east coast of Canada, servicing the Halifax area, and I'm here today to not bring you a positive video or a happy-go-lucky outlook. Today we're going to be discussing the massive disparity between average household incomes and what the average home price here is in not only Nova Scotia, but as well in the Halifax-Dartmouth region specifically. Now, before we dive into some of these scary and shocking stats, if you are looking to learn more about the Halifax real estate market, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. And if you have specific questions around buying, selling, or investing, please book a one-on-one call with me through the Calendly link below in my description. All right, we're going to be breaking down this video a little bit differently, and I'm going to be doing a talking head over some of the graphs that are going to support why there's such disparity here in the Nova Scotia region. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now let's look at the actual analytics of home ownership. Is it a pipe dream here in Nova Scotia? And are wages and incomes able to actually keep up with the rising home prices? So this first graph that we're going to be taking a look at is the median household incomes in Nova Scotia. So you can see just kind of a steady decline, what you'd expect. Some jumps bigger than others. We're sitting between 78 to 80,000 for median household incomes here in Nova Scotia, depending on which reports you read. So this is pretty typical, right? I mean, this is kind of what you'd expect, kind of that 2 to 3% a year. Obviously, that's going to fluctuate whether you're in the private or the public sector. And then this next chart is the home prices. Okay, so down here, we look at, a fairly reasonable gap. You don't want too much of a spread. And as we saw in the last graph, the wages are kind of trucking along. And early on here, we see some steady growth. This is 10 years ago. Okay, so 2015, we see some kind of steady growth, right? A little bit of a dip here, a larger growth here, kind of again, that 2 to 3, 4, 5% annual appreciation that we would see from a typical housing market. Then we get to 2020, which is, as we all know, the start of the pandemic and would turn into the most unpredictable housing boom of all time. And we just keep seeing steady growth. Now, obviously, this is quite a bit more drastic in the first kind of 3.5 years of COVID and even coming off the back half of it. But even as you can see here in the last couple of years post-COVID, home prices are still continuing to climb. So this isn't getting any easier for anyone. And now you start seeing some of these major gaps, and we'll get into this in the next few slides, but these gaps are much, much larger than what we saw over here. So this is exactly what we're looking at. So this was Nova Scotia homes in red. Now in the blue is in Halifax, Dartmouth, or HRM. So we're seeing even more disparity when it comes to wages. Now these are Nova Scotia wages, so it is fair to assume that median household incomes in Halifax are a little bit higher. That data is a little less available and accurate. But you can tell the disparity is even worse. So, right, we start seeing some really big jumps, and these are larger than the kind of typical changes that we saw early on here, where you actually didn't see much change in the HRM or the Halifax prices until we really start seeing this growth. And then we get these really large disparities between kind of the major capital city and the rest of the province. Now, here's where things really get interesting. So this chart is the affordability. So this yellow bar now gets added in, and this is affordability. So this is based off those median incomes and the average interest rates at those times. So you can see earlier on here, we had some really big affordability, but then there was the stress test that got put in. So the banks and mortgage lenders were brought in to put in stress tests to make sure that people could qualify if there were any variations or volatility in the mortgage rate market. So that's why we saw a bit of a pullback. But then you see here, right, this is when we get into those crazy low 5-year fixed rate mortgages. Personally, I got one in October 2020 for 1.79 on a 5-year fixed. Ridiculously low. Money really shouldn't be that cheap. And that's what we saw. Massive affordability that was well ahead of not only Nova Scotia average prices, but HRM home prices. And then we start to see this cool off in terms of affordability. And now we find ourselves here, which affordability is starting to climb a little bit with some of the changes in the interest rates, but we're still not seeing a correlation of affordability for the average home price. So an average income with average interest rates is not allowing you to purchase the average home. That is a, principle for, a dysfunctional housing market. And that's kind of what we're seeing here in the Halifax region, is these large disparities between affordability and good household incomes, 80,000 to 100,000 to 120,000. Like, those would always be healthy incomes for a household. And now those don't even really get you, a reasonable home anymore. And it's gotten quite difficult. So I wanted to break these numbers down so that you had a better idea of, what all these things look like, putting actual numbers into, this feeling of unaffordability here in the province. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So I hope you found this video helpful. I know it wasn't a positive video, but it's important to get a realization. And this isn't changing. So the importance really comes down to, are you willing to put your foot in the door, get into real estate now, and see the payoff down the road? Because that's not changing. I hope you found this video helpful. Please like this video, tap on the subscribe button, and hit that notification icon so you can be informed anytime I release new content. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.